Welcome to Learn, Create, Sew. For today's project, we're going to be making little drawstring bags. These little pouches are great for gifts. They're fun to make for holidays and birthdays. They're pretty fast and they don't take much yarn. I made these two for Halloween. You could easily change the colors to make it appropriate for Christmas, Easter, and many more. So let's get started. To begin this project, you're going to want some worsted weight yarn. I'm using 3 different colors. I find if you are using different colors, it's nice to use the same brand and type of yarn. That way you can make sure that the bag is consistently sized and part of it isn't bigger or smaller than the other. The tools you'll need for this project are a pair of scissors, a crochet hook. I'm using a 4mm hook. You're also going to want a yarn needle and stitch markers. Let's go ahead and begin. You're going to want to start with the yarn that you want on the base of the bag. So we're going to crochet starting from the bottom and then work up. I'm going to begin with the orchid color yarn here. To begin, we're going to make a slip knot. We want to make sure that we leave a pretty long tail for sewing. We're going to use the tail to sew the bottom of the bag closed when we're finished. I usually like to leave about 1 yard. You probably don't need that much, but I just like to be safe. And then I'm going to go ahead and make my slip knot. If you forget to leave a long tail, you can use separate yarn later, but the tail works nice. So to begin, you'll chain 27. When you're done chaining, it's always a good idea to double check just to make sure you have the correct number. Then we're going to make a ring. So I'm going to remove my hook just for a second so you can see. But we're going to loop the chain around so that the pretty side of the chain, the V's, are on the outside of the ring, and the bumpy side of the chain is on the inside of the ring. And I'm going to slip stitch into the very first chain. Make sure that your working yarn is on top and not underneath. Also make sure your tail is out of the way. So I'm going to place my hook through the right side of that first chain and towards the inside of the ring. And then I'm going to yarn over and pull through. And I've now created a ring. The outside of the ring should have the nice side of the V's, and the inside of the ring will be the bumpy part. To make this pouch, we're going to use double crochet. In double crochet, there's a turning chain of 3. So I'm going to chain 3. This chain 3 is also going to count as my first stitch. So I'm going to place a stitch marker here so I don't lose my place and forget. In the third chain, the V that's directly beneath the hook, I'm going to place my marker. This will count as the first stitch in the round. I want 27 stitches in each round. So I'm going to continue to make 26 double crochet around. When I make the first stitch, I'm not going to go into this stitch right here that has the chain 3. I'm going to go into the one next to it. So I'm doing double crochet, so I'm going to yarn over and I'll go in this stitch here, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So I now have 2 stitches, including my turning chain. Yarn over, go through your stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2. I now have 3 stitches and I'm going to continue till I have 27. You want to make sure that you're always stitching from the outside of the ring towards the inside of the ring. Your work may try to flip on you, so you may have to help it go back into place. But your hook should go through the right side of the V towards the inside of the ring. And if it tries to flip, just guide it back in place. Once you get to the end, check your work to make sure the pretty side is on the outside. So you want the nice side of the stitches on the outside and the rough, bumpy side of your stitches on the inside. So if you need to flip it, go ahead and do so. And then count your stitches to make sure you have 27. Yep, 27, so I'm ready to continue on. I'm going to join this ring with a slip stitch. I'm going to slip stitch into my first stitch. This is the one with the marker. It's the 3rd chain from my turning chain. I'm going to remove my marker and then from front to back, from the outside of the ring to the inside of the ring, I'm going to slip stitch through that chain, yarn over, and pull through. And now I'm ready to start the next round. To give me some height to go up to the next round, I'm once again going to chain 3. And I'm going to mark this with my stitch marker, just the 3rd chain I made there, which is right beneath the hook. Because I am stitching in rounds instead of rows, there's no need to flip the work. We're always going to be stitching from the outside of the ring towards the inside of the ring. And again, I'm not going to go into the stitch that has the chain 3. I'm going to start in the one next to it, and I'm going to do 26 double crochet for a total of 27 stitches. Yarn over, through your stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2, yarn over, go through 2, and I'm going to continue around. I've finished the round. Now is a good time to double check and make sure you've got 27 stitches. Once you're sure, go ahead and slip stitch to join the round. You're going to slip stitch into your first stitch, which was the 3rd chain of your turning chain. And then we're going to start row 3 in the same manner. So we're going to chain 3. Mark the 3rd chain as our first stitch. And complete 26 double crochet around, working around the outside of the ring towards the inside of the ring. I'm almost finished with round 3 and I want to change colors. When I change colors in crochet, I like to start in the stitch or round before the one I actually want the new color. So I've got my next color of yarn ready, and I'm about to do the last stitch in round 3. So I'm going to yarn over and go through the stitch, yarn over and pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2, and then when you're left with just the last 2 loops on the hook, instead of pulling up the first color of yarn, pull up the second. So I'm going to grab my second color, place it over the hook, and pull it through the last 2 loops. I can then go ahead and trim off my purple working yarn. I still like to leave it a good length. And next I'm going to go ahead and slip stitch into my first stitch just like always. So I'm going to remove my marker, slip stitch into that 3rd chain, and pull through. You'll notice that your new color of yarn might get a little loose. So go ahead and pull the tail to secure that snug. Same with the purple if needed, or with your first color. To secure these, you have a couple options. I usually just stitch over them. So when I do my next round, I'll just stitch over these 2 tails. But if you want to make it even more secure, you can tie them together in a knot. Sometimes you can see that on the front of the bag. Just depends on if that bothers you or not. But it will make it a little sturdier if you plan to get a lot of use out of this bag. I'm just going to leave them long, and then I will stitch over them in round 4. So to begin round 4, I need to make the turning chain. So I'll chain 3. And as before, that's going to count as my first stitch. So I'll mark it, and I'll get a different color marker so it stands out a bit better. And now I'm going to do 26 more double crochet for a total of 27 stitches in the round. And as I stitch, I'm just going to grab my 2 tails here, and I'm going to stitch over them. So I'm going to yarn over and put my hook through the stitch. You'll notice that my hook is going below those 2 tails. So I have the 2 tails over the top of my hook. And then I'm going to take my working yarn and I'm going to yarn over. Notice how the working yarn comes over the top of those tails. So when I pull through, those tails become caught under the working yarn. And then I'll continue my double crochet. I usually like to crochet over the tails for 5 or 6 stitches, so I've got 1 there. I'll do a few more. Again, just make sure when you put your hook through the stitch, the tails are over the hook, and then when you yarn over, that working yarn wraps over the top of your tails. And then pull through 2 loops, pull through 2 loops. If the tails start to get bubbly and are visible on the outside, just give them a little tug to help them lay flatter. Once I've crocheted over the tails for 5 or 6 stitches, then I'll just take the tails and place them towards the center. Then you can either cut off these tails or weave them in the opposite direction to secure them a little more. I like to weave them in, so I'm going to leave them long and keep stitching them around. I like to weave the tails in now so that I don't have to worry about them later. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab my yarn needle. And I'll take the first tail and I'm just going to go back over this first stitch and through, and then down a little in the opposite direction and trim it off. And then I'll do the same for the other tail. I'll pull the tail a little snug. Go over that last stitch and then back the opposite direction. Those thread tails are secure and it looks pretty good on the outside, so I'll continue. I've finished round 4 and I'm ready to join the round. I'm going to remove my stitch marker and slip stitch into the 3rd chain of the turning chain. And now I'm ready to begin row 5. I'm going to continue the same process in this same color for 3 more rounds, so I'll have a total of 4 rounds in blue and 3 rounds in orchid for a total of 7 rounds. And the process is the same as all the rounds before. So just chain 3, mark it, and 26 double crochet for a total of 27 stitches. I'll come back when I've completed those 3 rounds. I'm almost done with round 3 and I'm getting ready to change colors. So as I prepare to do my last stitch, I'm going to grab my next color and I'm going to yarn over and go through the stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and go through 2. And then when I yarn over for the last time, I'm going to pick up my new color and pull it through both loops. I'm going to give the tails a little tug to make sure that my stitches stay snug. And I'm going to pick up my working yarn for my new color and slip stitch into my first stitch there, into my 3rd chain of my turning chain. And slip stitch. If your stitch gets loose, gently pull on those tails. Tie them in a knot if you would like to. And then begin your turning chain to go up to the next row. So 1, 2, 3. Mark the stitch. Yarn over, and if you would like to, crochet over the tails. So I'm going to make sure that my hook is under the tails and the working yarn goes over them. I'm going to do that for 4 more stitches. I'm going to trim off my blue working yarn, push the tails to the inside, and crochet a few more stitches before weaving them in. And I'll continue with this round. Now that I've finished the round, I'm going to join the round slip stitching in that third chain. And I'm going to do one more round just the same. So I'm going to go around again in the same color. I'll come back when that's done. I finished the round. You should now have 3 rounds in color 1, 4 rounds in color 2, and 2 rounds in color 3. When we do the next row, we're going to keep the same color, but the next row is going to be a little different. Instead of having a full row of double crochet all the way around, we're going to create some gaps for our drawstring to pass through. So we're going to start out the same way by chaining 3 and marking the stitch. But in the next stitch, we are not going to do a double crochet. In the next stitch, we're going to jump over it. So we are going to skip this stitch here and not do a stitch in it. But we want to have the same with the cross. So to help carry us over above, we're just going to chain 1. Then skip this next stitch and go to the one after, yarning over, and make a double crochet. So you should now have a gap in between your chain 3 and your first double crochet. But when you look at the chain on the top, you should still see 3 V's from your stitch marker. So here's our marker, 1, 2, 3. Okay. We just did a double crochet, so the next stitch we're going to skip and we're going to chain 1, yarn over, skip this stitch, and in the next one, do a double crochet. We're going to repeat that until we have 6 double crochet, including our turning chain. So this is 1, 2, 3, chain to skip 1, and again, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, and let's count. We now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then where we have our seam here, where we've been having our first stitches, that is going to be the back of the bag. At the center front of the bag, we're going to do 3 double crochet in a row. So I've just finished 1 double crochet. Now I'm going to chain 1 to skip 1 and do a double crochet again and another double crochet right next to it, and then another double crochet right next to it. So you should have 1, 2, 3 in a row. And then we're going to start skipping 1 again. So chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, double crochet, and continue around. Chain 1, skip 1. When you get to the last stitch, you'll have a double crochet. You'll have 2 posts back to back next to each other in the center back. And then we're going to slip stitch it closed. Now that I've slip stitched that together, I'm going to chain 1. And I'm going to single crochet into this first stitch. And I'll go ahead and mark that first stitch. And then to create the ruffled edge along the top, we're going to use a V-stitch. So I'm going to chain 2, and in the exact same stitch that I already did the single crochet, I'm going to do another one. So I'm going to go back into that same spot, pull up a loop, and go through 2. Then I'm going to skip a stitch, so I'm not going to do anything in the next stitch here, and I'm going to jump to the next stitch and once again do a single crochet. Chain 2 and single crochet in the same stitch. Skip this one, single crochet in the next, chain 2 and single crochet in the same stitch. Skip 1, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet in the same stitch. And I'm going to continue around. I've just finished the V-stitch with the single crochet, 2 chain, single crochet, and I'm about ready to skip one, but there's not a stitch to go into next. So what I'm going to do is join the round. So I'm not going to do anything in that empty stitch. I'm going to go to the stitch that I marked and join it with a slip stitch. And I've already cut off my tail. And now I'm going to fasten off, so just yarn over and pull through. And now I'm going to weave in the tail. Okay. As I fasten this off, I'm going to weave it down that seam. And trim off my thread. I normally like to weave in a little bit more, but I trimmed my tail just a little too short, so I'll have to be careful about that next time. But there you have it. A cute little ruffled edge. We're almost done with the pouch. Let's go ahead and sew the bottom. To sew the bottom portion, I like to use a whip stitch, so I'm just going to flip this bag inside out. And I'm going to use my original tail to sew it. You don't have to do this. You can get a new piece of yarn if you prefer. Before you start sewing, you want to make sure these 3 double crochet are centered, because this will be the front of the bag. And then we're going to whip stitch it closed. To whip stitch, I'm just going to go through on both sides of the V on one side, aligning it with the stitch on the other, and also go under both sides of the V. And then I'm going to whip it over and do the same thing on the next stitch. and whip it over. Same thing on the next stitch. You want to pull it snug, but not super tight. Because I want to use the same yarn to do the other half, I like to actually tie a knot right here. So I'm just going to make a loop, go under a stitch, and pull it up through the loop to knot it. And then I'm going to pass my needle under the whip stitches I've just done, so I'm back at the center. And then I'm going to keep whip stitching. And you can tie another knot here if you like. And then when you get to the other end, you can tie a knot if you like, or just weave in your ends. I like to tie a little knot, so I make my loop, go through my loop, pull it up, and then weave the end under. And I'll trim off my yarn. And flip the bag right side out. The pouch is finished and now I'm ready to make the tie. So I'll set this aside for a moment. I like my tie to match the bottom color of the pouch, but you could do it any color you like. And you're just gonna want to start with a slip knot. You can make the tie whatever length you would like to, depending on how you want to fasten it. I'm going to chain 72. Once I've got 72 chains, I'm going to double check the length to make sure I like it. So I'm just going to hold it up to my bag and wrap it around and see if I have enough length to tie it how I want. I think I might actually want it a little longer, so I'm going to do a few more stitches. And then I'll check now, because this one I want to tie in a bow. I think that length is better. I ended up doing 82 stitches. And then I'm going to trim my yarn and fasten off. And then I'm going to weave this into the bag. I like to just thread this into my needle, and I'm going to start on one side of my 3 double crochet here at the center front, because I want to make sure that it's coming from the outside to the inside. I'm just going to poke it through the open space and out the open space. So jump over those double crochet into the open space, out to the open space. Into the open space, out to the open space. When you get to the center back, just jump over both of those double crochet there, into the space, out of the space. Into the space, out of the space. into the space, out of the space. Then I'll remove the needle and adjust my tie so that it's centered. I like the two ends to match up, and you can see here one side is longer than the other, so I'm gonna keep pulling. Until they're the same. Now you can weave in the ends of your yarn tails if you would like. I find that I like them better just loose. You don't want to trim them off too short in case they accidentally come undone. I like to leave a good inch. And then I just make sure that these are nice and tight. And we have our cute little drawstring bag. You can also change the look of the bag by adjusting how frequently and when you change colors. This bag was made with only 2 colors instead of 3. There are 4 rows of green, and then the rest of the pattern is completed using the multicolor yarn. These 2 yarns are from Hobby Lobby. This is I Love This Yarn in Jelly Bean and Christmas. It's also easy to change the size of the bag. These 2 pouches were made using the same pattern, but with different hooks. On this pouch, I used a 4mm hook, and on this pouch, I used a 4.5mm. You can see that it's slightly larger. You can also adjust the sizing by increasing or decreasing the number of rows, as well as the size of the initial starting chain. Both of these pouches were made starting with a chain of 27, but you can increase or decrease that amount in multiples of 4. So, for example, if I start with 27, I could make it bigger by adding 4 to be 31. Or I could add 4 again for 35, or 39, or 43, and so on. You could also decrease the size of the bag by subtracting 4. So we started with 27, you could go down to 23 or 19, and so on. We have to add or subtract 4 to make sure we're adding an open space on each side of the pouch. That way our ties end up on the front together and not one inside, one outside. We hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Until next time, have fun crocheting.